All right, we're back. We are COMP308, that's Emerging Technologies in the winter 2019 semester at Centennial, and we're week 8, part 2 of our broadcast, setting up Angular to work with the last RESTful service, if you will, RESTful API. And what we did was we were sending messages back with response.json. That's what we're doing. And it's going to go back to the calling service, whatever that is. Okay. In this case, the server doesn't care as long as you send the proper API call, whether it's a post or a GET request. And if you're authorized, it doesn't care. Right now, authorization is turned off. We're going to turn that on later. So now's the next step. I want to install Angular 7. That's right. Angular 7 on top of Express. And Angular 7 is going to be our front end. Like we said, a good place to check for this is Angular getting started. Angular, for that to work, we won't install these we're going to be doing now. So to show you this, I'm just going to reinstall. You can do this as many times as you want with NPM, as you know. So I'm going to keep this open. Take a look. This is our server. We're going to keep the server going. Over here on the right, this is our MongoDB implementation. And then we're going to go here, and we're going to start setting up Angular within our application. All right, so a couple things to note. I'm just going to close all this off. Right now, the way we're looking, we have a public folder, a server folder, and I want to put Angular within something called a client folder. For now, let's add the API, the CLI. So npm install -g at Angular CLI. So that's what we'll do. npm install at Angular. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, /CLI -g for global, right? So what this does is it goes out, it grabs everything, and then from Angular and installs the Angular CLI in your system. Okay? If you notice, my version of Angular CLI right now is 7.3.5. Yours may be different when you're watching this video at some other time in the future. Now that we have the Angular CLI, we can do the following. There's a couple commands. One of them is ng, that stands for Angular, space, new. We want to make a new project. Now we're sitting inside, just letting you know, we're sitting inside of this project right now. We're inside of the folder that's housing the Express server. All right, we're on the root. You can see the server.js is right here. So what I'm going to call this is, I want to call this client. So the client aspect is going to be put inside of a client folder inside of the same folder that Express lives in. So if I press enter, it's going to go out to Angular, and it's going to ask you some questions. The first question it asks you is, would you like to add Angular routing? And for our example, my friends, we're going to add it. We're going to say yes. And now it's going to say, what type of CSS or style sheet format do you like? Obviously, the best is something like Sass or less. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use basic CSS because we haven't talked about Sass in this course, but Sass is definitely a really cool framework. We talked about this before. It makes you really cool. So I'm just going to press CSS and press enter. And then it's going to scaffold out all the parts that we need, and it's going to place everything for Angular inside of this client folder. That's what it's doing. The client folder is inside of my COMP308 W2019 Lesson 4 8B folder. That's where it's going. To grab all the NPM, it does all the installations for you, all inside of client. Now notice we have two node modules. There's a node module on the outside, that was used by the server, and there's a node modules on the inside, that's used by the client. So two different package management areas, okay? When I'm looking at the clients, as an example, it's only stuff that's in the client. So Angular lives inside here. It doesn't live outside of here. Okay, not yet. For Angular, like we talked about last week, if you noticed, or the week we were doing this last time, we have this thing called angular.json. Let's look at that first. Angular.json is, I want you to see this as a manifest for the entire Angular application. So what this does is it says, okay, well, how am I set up? Source root. And by default, that means you'd have to rename this SRC folder to something else, and then you'd have to change it here, right? Be careful about this. Sometimes that really screws up things like this. SRC, you have to rename everything and change the pathing and everything else for a lot of other things. So for now, I don't recommend it, but if you really wanted to, you totally could, all right? Next, we have some prefixes. If you want to change the prefix from app to something else, so if you didn't want all your custom selectors to be named app first, like for example, app root, app header, app footer, and so on, then you could change this prefix to something else that makes you feel happy, right? Or adheres to some kind of thing in your company. Next, architect. Angular, different performance, and we can also do testing or linting. These are all things that are part of the architecture area. We're going to leave that alone. There's also testing with client end-to-end testing, which we're going to shut off right now. I'm not going to remove it, but we're not going to do testing at all. My default project is called client. We can definitely rename this to whatever you want. Let's leave it alone for now. And that's really it in a nutshell. One thing we need to change, though, we want to consider that I want to use Bootstrap and Font Awesome in my Angular. And sometimes that's tricky. And the reason why it's tricky is because Angular right now, it's not 100% compatible with the jQuery that we've been using that powers Bootstrap. So we have to use a slightly different version of Bootstrap called NG Bootstrap, which we're going to do later on. But I want you to notice something else. Inside the serve area, the serve area just basically allows us to create a small server that's live for testing. That's all it's for. But we're going to be using the build area a lot. And what the build area does is it creates an output to some path. And by default, that output is in the distribution folder, dist, inside the client folder, the name of the project, right? So notice that there isn't a dist folder, but if I was to run ng space build, it would create a dist folder, and inside there a client folder where everything would live. I don't want this. If we're going to work with Express, we got to make the distribution folder the public folder, right? So what I want is I want to swim out from this level to the public folder and make the public folder the distribution. Change. Next, assets. Notice that the assets are specifically in the source folder inside assets, right? And as well as the favicon, right? Those two things are considered assets. Notice that there's a .getkeep file. .getkeep file makes it so that when you upload this to GitHub, even empty folders will remain. It'll allow you to have an empty folder on GitHub as long as you have a .getkeep file inside of it. The .getkeep file does not have to have anything inside of it. It's literally just an empty file, okay? But it's really, really useful if you want to keep a structure that you want to put up on GitHub or preserve a structure that you're creating, okay? So that's assets, other things like, for example, ES5 browser support, which you definitely want true because most browsers have, especially older browsers, are using ES5 right now, ECMAScript 5, the older version of JavaScript. Here is where we're going to put stuff for our scripts and our styles to support Bootstrap, Font Awesome, and jQuery. These areas right here. Okay. But let's try something first. Before we move this forward, I want to run ng serve to see how this looks. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to open up my terminal window. I'm going to clear it. I'm going to run ng space, and I have to be inside the right area, so I can't be here. I've got to go into the client folder, right? In the client folder, now I can, it's a Angular application. I can just go ng space serve, and that's like saying nodemon equivalent. But I want to open up, -- open will open up a brand new browser. And it'll run after it compiles everything, because what Angular does is it's a compiled language. It's a compiled framework. It'll compile or transpile, and it'll serve everything on localhost 4200. Notice localhost 3000, I was actually like done on purpose. Where localhost 3000, localhost 4200, two different ports, they can work together, right? Now notice that it's not using Bootstrap right now. It's just running like this, and it has a couple of links, and it creates this little shortcut. If you haven't had a chance to do Tour of Heroes, I mentioned this before you guys went away. I recommend it. I think it's a really good overview of how Angular works. I'm going to have a chance to scratch the surface for some of it. This is what this thing does. So when we ran it, it ran a little server, and every time we make a change, it updates the server and updates the website, similar to nodemon or light server, where we did one of the first things we did in this course, right? I know back in the day, like we're talking 7 weeks ago now, or 8 weeks ago. All right, so that's what this does. Now, what about if I want to stop this? I want to stop the server. So I'm going to go here, stop it. And what if I want to build? Well, the build command looks like this: ng space build -- prod will be the production build. If you just do -- build, or just build, it'll actually include map files for debugging. We don't need the map files, so we're going to just do ng build -- prod. And when we press enter, if things go well, what's going to happen is right? This public folder here. And now it's empty. It killed it, actually. That's what it did. Let's try that again. So build. And there we are. Now it's going to work. To you, right? That when it does this generation, it's a one-time deal. Notice that it's not running a server. It literally, what it did was, I'm going to kind of close this up. Inside the public folder right now, where our other files, we had scripts in there and content. They're gone, right? But we do have this index.html page. I remember in the server, what we specified in our configuration, in our config, our app.js, what we specified is that we want to combine the public folder on the path. So this is actually joining statically to the path, which means any static files here, like index.html, should be able to be read if I access a server. Here's the example. If I go back up to here to my site, and I go to localhost 3000 and get rid of this, I see this. Why? Because by default, it's looking for index.html, index.htm, index.ejs, something, right, for this basic path. And it doesn't find it, it'll come here. So notice that it comes here and it finds this. And now Angular, a build version of Angular, is running inside of the public folder of our Express application. Guys, we've combined Angular and Express, but it's static. There's no database access. There's nothing. It's just an Angular, a basic Angular site. If you wanted to just do this and put this up on Heroku, it would work, just like this. Useless, but it would work, right? Now let's make it useful. So this is step one. Step one is understanding how things are being put together, right? And again, if I refresh, sometimes it doesn't show up, but if I refresh, you can see that the public server, the public folder is there. The public folder has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 files. It's really, really small. And if I was to actually look at the public server on the in Explorer, and if I do a right click and then properties, you can see that it's roughly around, or in the space of 367 kilobytes, like really small, under a meg, right? That's great for what this thing does. Now, Awesome includes a large amount of icons. There are other versions of Font Awesome that we could be using that reduces the icons to like 2. Only the ones you're using are 5, right? So you don't have to include the entire icon library like I'm going to do, right? I'm including it for testing, but there's going to be another phase if we had a chance to do some kind of cleaning up, that we'd clean up the library and use a smaller version, a different version of the Font Awesome library, because we don't want to make this huge. We want it small like this. A small footprint means faster loading times. So questions around this whole structure that we're doing. This is kind of an important thing. Yes? It can be separate, but then you're running and Angular. We have this app folder, and inside app, we're going to go in the app. We have this app module. And app module is where things start. Actually, to be fair, everything starts in our main.ts. So here's our main.ts. Our main.ts bootstraps the app module. That's what it does. When we say bootstrap, it's not like Bootstrap, the front-end framework. It's the entry point. It's a bad name. It should be like, hey, my platform browser, you know, for the entry point, use my app module. That's what it's really saying, okay? Which means that the app module, which is here inside of the app folder under my app.module.ts, which is a TypeScript file, is the entry point for my entire application, okay? What the application does by default, it has Angular module TypeScript class, a testing file, for us, useless. We're not going to use any testing in this course. HTML, which is what we're seeing here. This is our HTML, right? CSS for that particular page only. And then in this case, our routing module, where we're going to have all our front-end routing. That's our app. And this is our first component, the app component. I want you to think about this as the entry point for all other components. This is where it all starts. All right, cool. But I want to understand how this works. Well, we have, like last time we talked about this, we use a custom selector called app root. Remember, the app part comes from something that we can configure down in the angular.json file. But app root means this is the root of the entire application, the entry point, if you want to say it that way. And we're going to use this template URL, which is found right here. This template URL is the thing that we're going to start with. Notice these double curly braces. We talked about this last time. These are called handlebars. But what we're doing is we're interpolating, or we're injecting this property or this variable right inside of our code by using these double curly braces. Very similar to what we did with EJS. Instead of using less than % equals, we're just using double curly braces. Very similar. However, this title needs to exist inside of here, which it does. This is the title. This title is of type string. Remember back to TypeScript. This is a strongly typed language. So we can use this to kind of pass things from here into our app. If I change client to something that it should be, which COMP308, nothing happens because I'm not currently serving up my files. So if I go here, I'm not serving files. If I want to go into serve it up, I can say ng serve. Notice I'm not putting the -- open. Why? It's already open. So I don't have to do that. And it's going to go through and temporarily create a build, a temporary build, or a development build right? Right? This is where this is. But now it's welcome to COMP308 W2019 Lesson 8B. Okay, so I changed that because inside of my app.ts, property called router outlet. And router outlet is where all of my other content is going to appear from any other page that I create. Okay. Right now we don't have any other pages, just this one. So that's why we have this. Let's simplify this part and let's get rid of it. I'm just going to go, let's go do a div with a class of container. We don't have Bootstrap installed yet, but we're going to prepare it. And we're going to show you the difference. Div with the class of a container. Inside that, we're going to have a div with a class of row. Inside that, we're going to have a div with a class of column, with a class of column dash medium dash 6. We'll make it dash 8. All right? Make sense? And inside there, we'll have an h1 tag with a of this event, our title, whatever that is. So that's our own code. We've taken out the Angular stuff, and we have this stuff down here. If I press save, right, and I go back here, you see that there's no styling. Why? Bootstrap has not been installed. Let's install some stuff. We need to install Bootstrap. We need to install Font Awesome. We need to install jQuery. We need to install a couple of other things. And let's make sure we have everything like that, plus code hinting for ourselves, so that we can use it inside of our code. Please slow me down, stop me if you can, because once I get going with this stuff, you're going to see that I'm going to run very, very quickly. So again, one stands for, if I make a start, it means I can say ng start or npm start, it'll do ng serve. If I do an npm build, it'll do an ng build, and so on. So it includes these dependencies, and I want to add some more. Let's do that now. So what I want to do, I want to stop the server. Actually, let's just go back and restart the server for a second. I want to do one thing with you. I want to run this in 2 windows like I did before. So I'll keep the server running while I do some installations. I'll say that npm install, and I want to install Bootstrap. And I definitely want to install Font Awesome, right? So it's actually at Fort Awesome. This will and I'll just kind of kill this part right now. And I'm doing them all at once. I'm also going to install an angularized version of Bootstrap that can help us do things like responsive design for Bootstrap, because it's like I said, Angular and Bootstrap don't play well because of jQuery. So I'm going to go at ng-bootstrap /ng-bootstrap. There's a special version of Bootstrap that I talked about, as well as Angular 2-flash-messages. Angular 2 flash messages is going to be a flash message that comes up on our browser when a person has problems logging in or a person is successful, right? So that's what that is, similar to what we did with Connect Flash on the server side. So that's what that does. I also know that I'm going to be doing JWT, so I'm going to install at auth0 or auth0 Angular-JWT. I also need jQuery, and I need Popper.js. Those are all the new things I'm adding in, and I need to do -- save. I don't really need to do it, but I'm doing it. All right, so are we good? Where? Nope. font awesome. It's Fort Awesome / font awesome - free. It's actually not a typo. Thank you for looking at that. Are you ready? I'm going to press enter now. So when I press enter, it goes and grabs all those things and installs them. A bunch of modules. Now you're saying like, wait, Tom, why are we installing all this stuff? I need Font Awesome. I need Bootstrap. I need NG Bootstrap. I need Flash messages. I need all those things. I need JWT so I can do authentication later on. All right, well, that's really good, but I also want support for dev dependencies, right, on the back end. Like we did on the back end, we went on the front end. So I'm going to clear that up, and I'm going to say the same thing. I'm going to say npm install. Let's do the dev dependencies now, right? So I definitely want @types Bootstrap, so I get some Bootstrap support if I need to. @type query, and then press enter. Great. One thing okay, now let's use it. I'm just going to kind of minimize this, and I'm going to go back to angular.json, which is this file right here, angular.json. And what I want to do is inside the path where it says scripts and styles, I want to start typing in these areas. Now, remember, anything you put in the styles and scripts gets included automatically as a dependency inside the index.html file, right? So the heavier files I put in here, for example, that crazy font awesome stuff, it's going to actually inject a bunch of files in here to make it work. So please be careful, be cognizant that this is what it's going to do. So again, what I'm looking to do is make sure that I got things correct before I move on, so I won't kill you guys with wrong information. For my global styles, I want to go to node modules. You've seen this before, right? Bootstrap /ist/css /bootstrap.min.css. So that's the CSS for Bootstrap. We also want to do the same thing for Font Awesome. So it's node modules. Now this is @Fort Awesome /font awesome -free /css /all of font awesome.min.css. And then that should take care of our CSS for Bootstrap and Font Awesome. Scripts. We need to enable Bootstrap to work properly, and we need scripts for that. Node modules. .min.js. This is not always the best way because what it does is it adds in all the dependencies in the build, which makes the builds bigger. Bootstrap, ist.js, and bootstrap.min.js. And the last one is popper. But I don't have to add that in. Node modules. And we're going to add in the Fort Awesome stuff now. So we're going to say that @Fort Awesome /font awesome /js /all.min.js. And those are the ones we need. Save this. What you want to try and do is, let's just reboot it. So I'm going to stop it. In this case, I'm going to restart it because it's the angular.json file. It's kind of a configuration file, so it doesn't always restart the server. So again, it's ng serve. And it's going to recompile this part based on, it's going to add these things more. You can see that it's a lot heavier And if there's any problems, right? So it says that, hey, look, I'm trying to find this and we have a problem. It won't serve it. It'll kick out. Like right here. It says no such file or directory. It means I made a mistake somewhere. And it's looking at the jQuery.min.js somewhere. What did I do wrong? Node modules, jQuery clients. Just jQuery.min.js. Let's check it, because it won't run unless I do it right. So again, I'm going to go here under node modules. I'm going to look down to jQuery. Where's jQuery? Did it install? That's the $1 million question. So if it didn't install jQuery, of course it's not finding it. Yeah, so JS. No, J. Oh, I know what's happening. It's in the wrong place. CD. Wow, that's really bad. What happened? So did I do all my installations in the wrong place? That would be really, really terrible. That's why it gave me all those warnings. Yep, I was in the wrong. I have to be in the client. I put it on the server. That's okay. It's good. That's what happens sometimes. So yeah, that's why I didn't find jQuery, and that's why it complained, because in here, my package.json, I actually included a lot of other stuff that I don't need. Like for example, is at Angular Bootstrap. I'm going to remove them. So I'm just going to take a second to correct my problems. So I'm going to go to here and I'm going to do an uninstall. So npm and uninstall. That's okay. I'm okay with that. At auth0 / Angular / JWT. Then Fort Awesome, I'm okay with. That was already installed. ng Bootstrap. I can actually uninstall the rest of them too, because I don't need it anymore. Bootstrap. And Angular 2-flash-messages. Put them in the wrong place. Might as well get rid of Bootstrap too. I don't need it anymore. Connect Flash, I'll leave. Right? Because it doesn't make sense to stay. And so is at Fort Awesome / font awesome -free. I think that's most of it. jQuery I also don't need. jQuery. And and Popper. I don't need Popper. Popper.js. It's mine save. So what this does is just removes those applications from the npm modules. It lightens my load. It's good. It's much better to do that when you don't need them. Make sure that you don't need them in your server, and you're pretty good, right? Body parser, probably need to get rid of this too, like jQuery I don't need for my dev tokens. So again, I'll go npm uninstall. Strap and types jQuery types. I mean, I'm here not because I didn't really want to do this today, but it is what it is. Minus save minus dev. It kind of cleans up this a little bit. makes it a little bit lighter. Okay, let's do that again, but we'll do it in the right place. And the great thing about having this on the terminal is just can go up a couple times, go into the right directory, and then we're good to go. So again, I'm going to go into the directory that I want to, which is clients. That's what I should have done, right? And what I want to do here is just go up a bunch of times until I see that big installation line that I did, which is this, right? So that's everything that I would need. That's on the client side. And I might as well do the same thing with the other stuff that I need, which is a couple of types for me on the client side. Excellent. So that's pretty good. So now that one, and this is where it would be, we can check for it, is package.json up here. You can see now that that is installed properly, right? There's Angular 2 Flash and so on. And it's installed the way we want it to be installed with our dev dependencies. Now we should be able to be good with this. We're just going to stop this. I'm glad I stopped this, otherwise it will be really weird. ng serve, and let's see how that fixes it. Notice this is client now, and this is on the client side. If there's any problems, it'll come up. Okay, still having a problem. So now where is it looking? It says C users, Tom, client, node modules, at Fort Awesome, font awesome, JS, all.min.js. Okay. Did I not install font awesome? Let's take a look. That's a different error. Sorry about that. Maybe I didn't. No, it's here. At Fort Awesome. And then it's, where's my angular.json? Font awesome.free, CSS, and then all.min.css here. Node modules, font awesome. And the same thing goes with JS, which is the other one, all.min.js, which is there, right? So CSS, oh, that's what the problem is. It should say font awesome-free. There you go. Save that. And unfortunately, it doesn't reboot this one because it doesn't see a good build. So ng serve. Again, this is guys, you'll see from this, if I go back here, that this is definitely Bootstrap. See? Bootstrap. Now, we also know that this is, the reason why it's coming out like this is because it's really, really big. We know that if I go back up to the top, let's just collapse some of these. And if I go to my app source HTML, we're using a 8 column and column medium 8. Let's make column medium 10. You'll see that immediate change. Watch. So save. And then this, you'll see that that changes automatically. Instead of display 2, maybe I want to make this display 4, so a little slightly smaller. You can see that that changes immediately. And if I want to display, I think it's 5 or 6 might be the smallest one. Let's see, display 5. Pretty good. All right, next. What I want to do is I want to start planning out my modules. So let's think about this now. I have my code. I have my my pages. And what I want to do is I want to do partial files. I want to do a header and a footer. All right. Now, the way Angular works is it works with components. So I want this header component and a footer component to be included in here in my app component right here. So I want a header and footer. That means I need two new components. The way you add components in Angular with Angular CLI is the following. Follow me here, guys. ng space generate component, and then the name of the component. We want to put it in a partials folder, and I want to make something called header. And inside there, it creates 1, 2, 3, 4 files automatically for you, right? One of the files we don't care about, the spec.ts, but the rest, it gives you a header component.ts, a TypeScript file, as well as an HTML file. Here's header works, and a header component.css, which is empty. Let's do the footer as well, and then I'll show you how this all works. So again, we're going to use our Angular CLI, ng. Instead of generate, let's use the keyword, the shortcut G. Angular G, ngg, ng generate, component, and then the name of the component, partials, / and then it's going to be footer. Right? What this does is if you go into the you can see that component.html. So I want to do that. Now that they're there, I can do this. I can go into my app component.html and say app-footer is what I want to add in, right? And I want to do the same thing for my app-, oh, sorry, that would be the header. Haha. Header. This would be the footer. All right, cool. So it doesn't know what those are. This is bizarre because typically it should. And the way it knows that normally what they are is that the header component, this one right here, it gets included in something called the app module. So notice that header component and footer component is there. And sometimes what happens is with TypeScript in general, if it may not remember this, we know it's working. So here's where my header would go. Here's where my footer would go. So again, all I've done is inside my app.component, I've added an app header because in the header, you can see that the selector is app-header. So if I use app-header, I inject that component wherever I use app-header. Does that make sense? And I can do that 10 times if I want. A good example of that is if I just use app header a couple times more, I can use those selectors, right? As many of those selectors as I want. And if I did that, then if I go back, you can see that there's a bunch of those. Each component will be reused. An instance of each component can be added to the page. And this is kind of really cool, the way this works. We only need one of them. And they're not a very exciting. So I'm going to go back to our server under views, right? We have our views folder. Inside our views folder, we have our partials folder, and we have a header. And we can just grab, not this part. We don't need this part. We need the nav part. I'm going to grab all this all the way to the bottom of the nav. I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to go out to my header component inside my header dash the component.html, and then replace this stuff with that stuff. And notice we have EJS. And, well, Angular doesn't know anything about EJS. So we're going to have to get rid of all the stuff that has EJS in it, like this stuff. So just go through it right now and just delete all that stuff because you don't need it. So I'm just going to go and grab anything that has EJS, any line that has EJS. Just get rid of it. And we can go in and fix this up a little later if we need to. I'm just getting rid of extra spaces, and the way it got copied in somehow is weird. So get rid of that. And those two lines. This line. I mean, literally, all we're doing is deleting, so it's not a big deal. And the reason why I'm deleting those is because there's no analog for them here. Like, I can't leave them in. There's no need for it. Okay, so this is kind of weird. We have welcome I'm going to leave this in. We're going to kind of fix this later. So I'm going to put in a comment, kind of a comment that I can put in. Comment this part out. And this part can be corrected. This part, I can just remove this part, and I can just remove this one. And if I was to save this as is, .component, I didn't save it, and now you can see I have one of them. I can put as many of those toolbars as I want. Each component is its own instance. All right? So kind of works, but nothing happens. It doesn't go anywhere right now because there's no routing. Now we need our footer. We never really had a great footer, right? We just had like the CSS and the jQuery and JavaScript stuff, which we don't need right now because we already have that in our angular.json file. So what I want instead is I want inside of our partials, I want to put in a footer that stays sticky to the bottom. Okay, that's what I want. What I mean by that is, as you'll see in a second, I'm going to go into the footer. I'm going to go into HTML. I want to get rid of this stuff. And inside here, I'm going to go div dot with a class of navbar. It's going to be a special navbar, which is fixed bottom. I'll be okay. And it's going to be a light navbar light. We'll also do a background light. You can actually choose other default colors. Inside there, we're going to have an H6 tag as an example with, yeah, that's good enough for now. So in our H6 tag, we're going to have and copy, copyright. A copyright statement, the year, 2019, and all rights reserved. Okay. Now that I updated this, if I go back to my website, it's down here. So what does a sticky footer do? Well, that means that no matter how big my web page is, it sticks to the bottom. Right? So kind of always in the bottom. Kind of neat. So that's what this does. This is cool that we hard coded it, but what if next year we forget? Then it's going to look like we're not updating our website. So we want to put in a variable here, maybe a variable called year would be nice. And this is going to be our first little variable we've put into our code, right? So it's a good example of how this works. So I'm going to go back down to here. It's not a fantastically difficult one, but again, you can see that the selector is app footer. That's the default. We're using the footer.component.html, which is the one we just came from, where HTML, our template for this particular component, URLs. What we want to do here is something a little bit easier. We want to create a year property, which is of type number. And we have a couple of different constructs here. One is the constructor. In a constructor is where we're going to put things like services and modules and those kind of things. Anything we want to import or inject into our class, we're going to kind of put that in the constructor. But the thing that kicks off or initializes the entire class is ng on init. It's a special lifecycle method that always works. It kind of starts functioning or is called when this object is called. So this.year is equal to date.getFullYear, which actually is just a built-in JavaScript function that gives us the year, right? And then now that I have this construct here, if I go back to HTML, and if I want to inject the date in here instead of the year instead of putting a hard-coded year, I can do that with double curly braces or handlebars is what they're called. Double curly braces, and then here, right? And what this does is it'll detect if year exists. If it doesn't exist, it'll kind of give me it'll complain. But what's happened is if I go back out, you can see that it's still 2019. If I really want to prove to you that this is how it works, let's just change this to, I don't know, 2025, and then go back. In decorator pattern, basically the decorator influences or modifies the class that comes below it, so directly below it. And this is similar to how attributes are used in .NET, where they have a square bracket with a bit of an attribute and options, and then it affects the class below it, right? Similar to that. But this decorator pattern basically has these parameters, and these parameters are in reference to this class, right? Actually, what happens is there's a linking between this class definition and the HTML and CSS files that are here inside this folder, okay? And you can choose to use some of these, or I think the only one that's required is selector. Okay, okay, so this is pretty cool. Page, a contact page, and a home page. So 5 pages, right? I want to add them in, but they're going to have some similarities. For example, I want all of them to have access to a some kind of jumbotron, every one of them, right? But what if I wanted to? That means I'd have to copy and paste the same code over and over again. And if I want to change the style of every single page, I want to make a template for all pages. So I want to make a master page or a base page or something like that. And that could be something else that I include in my partials. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to scaffold that out. So I'm going to say that I want to make a new page. So ng generate a new component called partials base dash page. You could also call this master page. It's been called different things. Enter. And then what this does is it generates a brand new pages, base pages to inherit from it. I can use inheritance, right? And this is an example of what you can do when you include one component inside of another one, kind of. Or you can inherit from the other component. All right, so this is what my base page is going to look like. What I want for my base page, and sometimes you get these little weird complaints, but they're not really errors. I want to inject an activated root. So what I want this is each of my pages, I want them to detect which page they're on, and I want to communicate from the page back to the navigation saying, I'm on this page. Please mark that root as active. Right? Similar to what we did with EJS, but without all that code, right? But I want in TypeScript, we would do something like this. Private underscore my name, which is a string, right? And then I could ask for a name. Don't do this. Don't type this. A name, which is a string. And then what I want to do is I want to say when my constructor is created, I want to say that this dot underscore my name is equal to name, right? That's like, I gotta type this out. I got to put this there. I got to put this in there, and it doesn't do anything. All it does is pass things from the constructor out here. Yeah. Well, there's a quick way, a shortcut to do this with TypeScript, so we don't have to do all this work. And it looks like this. Undo all this. This domain and my name, blah, 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 passes it in, the whole thing. So we want to do the same thing, but we want to do it with, I want to do it with my activated route. And even better, what Angular 7 will do for us is it'll actually import all the components you need right here without me having to type anything. So I don't have to make an error. Here's how it looks. Private route give it a name, whatever you want. And then I'm going to use something that's part of my router, which is the activated route. Notice it comes up. Part of Angular router. If I click on this now, bam, it gets included as part of my import for this particular component. This is an example of dependency injection. It imports it and injects it into the constructor. And anytime we want to inject something into the constructor or include one private root does that whole thing where we say this dot root is equal to root, and then all that stuff. Okay? All in one line. All right, so cool. We have this activated root. I want to have this. And what I want to do is I also want to have a title property. So I want to include a title property. So we're going to say that title is of type string. And in my ng on init, which is my initializer, I want to say that this dot title is equal to, and this is a special thing that the root does, this dot root dot snapshot dot data dot title. And you're like, wait, what the heck? What is that stuff? And what it is when we create our routing table, we're going to create a routing table for each of the roots. It's going to have a title as part of the data property of the root. Title is something that we can inject in our code. Okay, are we good? Now what we can do is once we have that title, we can go back into the component and we can make a jumbotron. So we can say that we have a div with a class of container, and inside there we have a div with a class of jumbotron. Again, this is only if you like this kind of thing. And then we have inside of there we have an h1 tag with a class of display-4, right? And if you want to, I can put in single curly brace where I can say welcome to. I can't put a double curly brace because it won't allow me to, but then I can just click on this thing. So welcome to, and then double curly brace, title. Now see it doesn't complain because the title is a property that I've defined inside of this class. So anything I define like this one here inside this class is available right away immediately inside of my HTML. So I can inject properties inside of my HTML in this way. Are we good? Now this is just a base page. I'm going to inherit from the base page for each of my other root pages. So that means that home page, about page, contact page, all those pages are going to inherit from my base page. Okay, let's do that. So here, I'm going to create a bunch of pages now. So bear with me while I do this. Ready? Here we go. Now, I wish there was a better way to do it. I don't think I can do more than one page. I can try it. I just think it's going to ignore me. So this is how it works. I'm going to say ng generate component, and I want to say it's going to be in something called pages. That's going to be the directory. And then page is going to be the home page. And if I was going to do this again, I really want pages, and I want to do the about page. I don't think you can do this more pages than one. I think it's only going to generate the home page. Let's see what happens. Boop, or the about page, one of the two. See? It ignored the about part. This out, it's going to include that. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to go pages, products. I'm going to go up and pages, services. And all I'm using is ng space generate g space c, which is a component. I want a component, which happens to be a page. And I'm going to create these things through the scaffolding system. All right, so I need to do a couple things here. There's some repetition that I need to take. One of them is in my home. I'm going to go into my home component. And what I want to do is I want to inject my I want to extend my base page. So if I go to my home component, remember how we did extension? We can say extends, and then my base page, right? It injects it automatically, just like that. Now, one thing when we inject a page like that automatically, so I'm injecting my page, right, is have to do something like this, super. But this doesn't satisfy. Why? Because the super constructor is requiring a root, right? The activated root. So then I got to do that. I got to say, well, I want a root, but I don't want to make it private this time because root already exists in my super constructor. So I can just say something like root, which is activated root. And then I pass root into the super constructor, and we're good. So now that satisfies the requirement. So it says that, okay, take the activated root, pass it in here, and then pass this into my base page. And then it can do its work. One thing I need for sure is in my home component, right? I want to pass in component app base page, this one. See that? So if I go back to my home components, I want to paste that in. So voila. And once I've done this, then for my home component alone, I'm going to save all those, make sure that they're all good, because if I don't save them, they're not going to compile. If I go back here, you can see that what I should get is a component that comes to my home page. Now, one thing to note is that I'm not really getting my home page. Notice that I'm not getting my home page. I'm getting this page right here, right? The reason I'm not getting my home page is because I have no routing. So I need to set that up. For now, though, let's just continue with this and put this same structure in all the other pages. Into routes, which is activated routes. I'm going to pass the route into the super constructor. It's going to be repetition, guys. So route. And inside the super constructor, that's fine. I'm going to go into my home page. And inside there, I'm going to do this. Okay, that's that about page. And then my contact page can do the same thing. So again, we're going to extend the base page components, which I'm going to also need a route, which is activated routes. And I'm going to pass the route into my super constructor. That does all that. And then inside my HTML page, I'm going to replace this with app base page. That's contact. The base page components. Anyone not understand what I'm doing with the base page component? Please tell me now. Activated routes. Everyone understands? Fantastic. I'll test you on it. Right. Super route. So again, think about this as it's just inheritance. I have one page. I want to have the same properties from one page and another one. I can inherit. That's all I'm doing. And here is the same thing. Not that there's no secret around this kind of stuff that I'm doing. I mean, it's really just trying to make this work the way I want it. You don't have to do this, by the way. You can totally not do this. I'm just showing you how to do it because I want you to understand how to do it. So base page component and routes, activated routes. But I think it's useful. And paste that in. Go. All the pages are done. They're all red, but that's only because they don't know. Sometimes the connection doesn't work the right way. You can see that it compiled properly. If I go back out here and if I go to home, about, services, and all that stuff, it doesn't show up because there's no routing. There's no routing because inside of my app.routing module, I don't have any routes set up. So if I go to my app-routing module now, which is in my root of my folder, there is a routes array, and it's empty. The routes array takes an object, right? And the first property of each of the objects for the route array is a path. And you have to specify what it looks like. Right? Well, it's the home component. Notice how it adds it in, right? And then let's make sure there's a comma here because this is an object. And then I can also specify a data component, right? And again, I just want to get this correct. I always mess this one up. I want to specify a data component that is just data. There's another sub object with a property of title, and I want to pass in home. Okay. So this is the home path. And to show you how this works, if I would just include this and save it, when I go home, now click home, and if it actually goes to the home path, like /home, app component. So how does this work? If I go to my app component.html, I have this part. And then I have this part. So my router is here. I want to put this router outlet, actually, I want to get rid of this. And I want to put my router outlet in here. So this is how it should look. My app component.html should look like this. Very simple. If I was to do this, when I go back, you can see now it's the home component. I don't do about yet. I don't have an about root. And so nothing happens. Nothing comes up. But if I want to add that in, I go to my route. This is on app-routing.module.ts. And what I want to do is I want to put another route in there. So again, let's type it out. I want to do an about route. I want to do a component. I want the about component. To show you this, if I press save and I go back to the about component, you can see now that it's there. I can actually get to the about page because I've specified these routes. That's how Angular writing works on the front end. So you have routing on the back end for your API, and you have routing on the front end for your front end pages in Angular, right? And this is a good way of doing it. Questions so far? Yes. Sure. Wait, there's more to be done. All right, so this is good. I want to copy paste, but there's a problem with this. See how this is all nicely added in automatically? If I copy paste sometimes, what you get is a home about. Here's products. I need to change the about component. So if I put in products component, I'm lucky that it does this. This is important. I want to change this to products. Before, it didn't do that. There wasn't any kind of, so these are all components. And these are all modules. Just breaking it down for you guys. Modules and components. And again, let's just do it again. So put that in there, services. And the component is the service component. And this is services. And then contact. And it's the contact component. And contact. Okay. There is one other component that I want to put in, and it's like this page not found component. What happens if I get to a page and I try and get somewhere and there's no route for it? I want to have a custom 404 page to get there. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go ng, so you can see it again. ng, generate components. It's going to be inside of, and again, you can put it in partials. I have a partial page, but it's really like more of a page. So I like to put it inside my pages. So pages slash, and again, this component is going to be the page not found component. And notice how I separated with dashes. It's going to actually create upper camel case for that, page not found. All right, cool. Now that I have the page not found, I don't know what that is yet, but what I want to do is I want to create a route for it. So I can go in there and say, well, what about mydomain.com, right? Then I want to actually not go to any component, but rather redirect like this. I want to then redirect to, and I want to redirect to /home. That's what I want to do. I also want to make sure that the path matching is perfect. So I want to go full path matching for this particular one. So it has to be this, okay? Next, I want to add another kind of route, and this is that route that I was talking about. What about if there's, I don't know, something, that path that's not found? I want to go to, page not found component, right? Page not found component. And I don't need any of this. Okay. So this is my page not found component. I've actually declared my page. It's kind of okay, but see how it jumps like that, like this? That's because the routing is wrong, and I got to go back and fix that. How about logout? Logout is page not found because I don't have a logout, and I don't have a login, right? So that's pretty cool. But the rest kind of work, okay? Load the pages, modify them, change the CSS, adding in whatever you want, and you can do then just like this. All right, so this is pretty cool. I think we've done a lot here, but I want to customize that. For the page not found page. Now, the page not found page is not something that's going to inherit from the base page, and you don't have to. You can give some of them that inherit and some of them that don't, right? In fact, I'm not going to change anything in here because all it's going to be is like, hey, page not found, right? But what you can do is you can add some pretty cool something in here to basically tell the user that it's a page not found. So div with a class of container, and inside the div of the class of container is div of the class of row, and inside that we have a div with a class of column, and then column dash medium dash 12, so the whole length of the page. So that'll work on small devices as well. And inside that, we're going to say an H class of, what the hell happened? With a class of button, it's me, my fat fingers, button dash primary, and then button dash large, right? And inside that, we're going to have an I tag with the class of SAS FA dash undo dash alt, and a class of FA dash large, right? You like that? It's all in one. And I kind of got it almost right, but not quite. So here I want to make an error, right? Where it's a 404 page not found error. Make this a little bolder, the error parts, error. I can make the 404, put that strong in the 404 too. Maybe something like this, error 404, right? Page not found. And I want to make a button. That's what this is. And the buttons, they need to have a router link. That's what they're called, a router link. And router links are different than hrefs because they work nicely with our with Angular. And we're going to make it so that it goes home. That's what it does. So all hrefs, when you convert them on our nav bar to router links. So that's how it works. Okay, and here inside of our thing, we're going to say, take me home, right? Yes. Right? It's not beautiful, but it works. Now this is weird. I don't like this. What happened there? How come it's all blue like that? Button primary, button large, router link. What did I do? Last column, medium. Nope, not blue background. I don't know. That's a new one. Anyways, we'll figure it out. It's not important. .404 page of that. That kind of gives you the undo. Yeah, I don't know. That shouldn't be. That should be white. Background, I mean. All right. Anyways, that's fine. So it did this, and that's okay. So that sends us back to the thing. So it's our custom 404 page. Any questions around this stuff? I mean, again, I think it's fairly straightforward the way we've gone about it. I don't think there's anything scary about this kind of stuff. However, one thing to note is that there is absolutely no data right now. There's no connection to the backend API. We've just created some basic ugly pages, right? So let's do a couple things. I'm going to go back to the bash, this part. I'm going to stop. Inside of the server, on the server side, and make sure that it works okay. And if everything works, then we're going to see a much bigger version inside of our public folder. Take a look at this now. This is kind of messed up. This is where I was telling you that, yeah, you know, including font awesome stuff is good, but that's a lot of stuff. And in fact, remember, it was like 367K. Now, I've added a few, you know, CSS and HTML files, but really no other graphics. So how big is it now? So if I go back to open in my Reveal and Explorer, and if I go to properties, this is all the font awesome stuff. Look, 4.29 megs. No good, right? But it's okay for now. Good news is once we've done this, if I go back to, oh, not that. If I go back to my page and I want to look at it on the client side, if I just refresh, you can see that I've got this back, right? So if there's an about page, like here's something that happened. I got an about 404, right? So why did this happen? Because of my router links. Remember my router links up here? See how this didn't work when I went to products? I was trying to do it href. Href works on the Angular side, doesn't work here on the server. So we need to fix it. And that's why I brought you here so you can see the difference. We'll do this, and then we'll stop, put it up on GitHub, and then we'll stop the video. Then I'll go on to the next video, which is the backend, like how to connect. So what I meant to do, and so I'll go here and I'll say, I'll do ng serve. So we'll pull that up while we're doing our work. Is inside of, we'll collapse all these for a second. We'll kill these and we'll collapse all these for a second. And we'll go into our client, inside of our source, inside of our app, inside of our partials, header, and look at our header.html. You can see that, and this is one of our problems, each of these things is a link. And that's nice. We don't need this. That's nice, kind of, but doesn't really do anything nice for us. Let me explain this. A link tries to link, but there is no real link that's happening on the page, right? We're actually not reloading a page. We have a single page application that's happening, and I'm injecting the header and the footer. I'm not going anywhere. So when we're trying to route somewhere on the back end, it's going, I don't know where /home is. I don't know where about is. However, if I went to the same page and I use front-end routing, we can trick it to thinking that we're in the same page, which is what we want to do. And we can do this by changing these to router links instead of hrefs. If I just change this to router link, so I can do a search, replace href. I can replace hrefs with router link. And I can do those 8 replacements. And I can save this page. So save. That's all I've changed, right? And if I go back to build again, so remember, we want to test this with the build. We know this is going to work. It's already worked on the other side, but I want to build it. So again, I'm going to go ng build -- prod for production, and it's going to take that and dump it inside of our done in there. But I think it's not a great workflow, and it takes too long for the build, so it doesn't update fast enough. Not really right. So I'm going to go ng serve again just to get that back up and going. But let's take a look at the build. So if I go back to the website now, and if I refresh, then yeah, there doesn't look like anything because there is still no products. However, if I go here and click on products, it looks like there's products, right? So we're good. However, there is this thing, if someone was to go up here and press enter, that would get this. We want to correct this. We want to make sure that no matter what happens, if someone enters something here on the server side, it's going to take us right to the index.html page every time. And we're everything that's missing, we're going to fix it now. And we're going to fix it by adding one line of code. And I'm doing this so I can demonstrate it to you, so that way you know the problem. You just don't take it, copy paste, and you don't care about it. Then you have a problem. You're like, why is this happening? Because you don't know. So there is a line of code that we want to put in where it says to do need to capture random links or incorrect URL information, right? This is the to do we're going to get rid of. We want to do an app.get, actually, an app.get. We're going to do here right at the top level where we're saying, hey, if there's something else, let's make a catch-all, right? We're going to say that if anything else happens, we're going to make a request response right here on the server and without any kind of routing. And what I want to do is I want to send file. We're going to do path. Join. Okay, so what does it do? So it says, well, if it's anything else other than these 2 routes, the API routes, take us to the HTML page every time, no matter what happens. We're never going to have a 404. It's going to always go to the HTML page. Okay, so let's save it. And it's not rebooting here. It's actually rebooting here. See? On this part. So how does this look? If I go here and refresh, bam. No matter what I do, if I go here and enter, bam. This takes me here because this doesn't know what it is, but I can't go to this and go like this. This is going to take me back to the last page that was at, which is exactly what I want. Okay, it won't crap out. I don't want the page to stop working. I don't want to see that server side 404. I want to handle the 404 page on the front end. And now this is interesting. This should work, right? Where should this go? It's not working. So if I refresh the page, this is the error that we're getting, right? And this is what I thought was the problem, but let's go fix it. So again, if we go to our pages, page not found page, when you go to here, so silly. That's what the problem is. Now, you know, we refresh and I go home, this should work, right? But wait a minute, how come /home is not working? I'm not getting a link. That's still a problem. Well, my feeling is there's something that's missing. I'm just going to cut this out for now and just do it by hand. So if I take this and save it, oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. That's funny. That's better. That's what it should do. All right. And the reason why this didn't do it because we didn't build this one. We built this one, right? This one is the client, the server. This is the client, right? And that's why am I typing? Questions so far? I'm going to stop here and then we're going to go and I'm going to do the next part. Yes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. So example, if let's do it again. So I'll build it one more time. That's a good question. So what the question was how does it know which link to go to if it's just going back to the index.html page? It doesn't. It just goes to the last page that it knew, whatever the last page was. It doesn't update that page. It just goes back to there. So again, if I was to stop this, and let's do this quick build. So we're going to do a ng build, minus prod, production build. It's going to take those, compile everything, and dump it inside the public folder, right? And when it does that, it's going to, one day. That's why I don't like doing this as a workflow. It's like you do it once. When you're done your feature, you do a feature, do build, feature, build, feature, build. And that way you don't have this wait time. Serve. Okay, so let's go back and see what this looks like on the server now. So if I refresh, you can see that the 404 page is updated, right? And look, this is good, right? If I go home, we're good. All this stuff. But if I type in some weird, link, it's going to take me to the 404 page. It will never take me out again. Even if I press enter, it's not going to take me out. It's going to take me right back to my index.html page. And whatever that link is in here, the URL, is the URL that it's press enter. It's going to go back to here, 404. Doesn't matter. Okay, so what if I went like this? What if I went index something else, like actual home, like about, I type in an actual route. So not this, but something weird, like about.html/my funky page. Doesn't matter, right? I go, how about my weird page.html. Doesn't matter. It'll catch it, it'll catch all, and it'll send it back to where it came to that page. That's what I'll keep doing. And this is what I need you guys to do. Otherwise, it's going to create a whole where some two different terminals.
So whenever I you run nodemon and serve, right? Like when my nodemon connects to connect to the same port as
because you're running NodeMon in the wrong folder. See, I've got two folders here. This one is running on client, and this one is running on the server side. Okay, that's why. Okay, let's take a short break, and then yeah.
Are we sending a request from the server 3000?
No, nothing to do with 4200 anymore. Only for testing. 4200 is only our development server. It's nothing to do. The final product will have nothing to do with 4200. Actually, it'll have nothing to do with 3000 either. It'll be the Heroku website, whatever it's going to be.
Okay, so
right?
3000 knows what's in the
It knows what's in the public folder. 3000 knows that when I go to some random site, it's going to look inside the public folder, and we have in the public folder, we have an index.html page, and that's the page that's being rendered. The index.html page has its app root, and the app root is where everything gets injected for Angular.
app root doesn't require 3000 can be
There's no server. Don't think about the server. Think about, if I have, well, you need a server. You can't just have, if I just can't just double click and make this work typically, right? So example would be, you're thinking that if I was to go into this public folder, might work actually. Let's look at reveal. So if I was to go into my public folder and just double click, will it work? And I'll bring up, I don't know, Chrome. The answer is no, right? Because even if I double click on the file, it doesn't know what to do with it. It needs a server, right? So you need some kind of server, but you don't need anything too fancy. Any server will do, right? But don't worry about it. There's no connection between 3000. 3000 is just our development port, right? 3000 and 4200, we're just using two different ports, so we can test Angular and test the router separately. But on Heroku, there's no ports. There's just the server, right? And the server looks inside index.html, which is inside the public folder of its structure. That's it. Okay? Let's take a short break, guys. When we come back, we'll do the connections.
how do you make like our